Hello, everybody, and welcome to Titan Talk, a San Marino High School teacher-hosted, interview-formatted, bi-monthly podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Peter.
And I'm Andrew, and this is a podcast where we highlight two kinds of educators, those who have something of value to say in regards to teaching, learning, testing, and wellness, and those who have a personal story worth sharing.
Thank you all so much for joining us today for episode 1 of the SMHS Titan Talk podcast. Also joining us today for this, our very first time out of the chute, is Trevor Packer, the head of College Board's Advanced Placement Program. In other words, Trevor is the guy who is responsible for the ongoing development and management of 38 AP courses taken each year by 2.5 million students in subjects ranging from biology and calculus to studio art and world history. Trevor has led the AP program since 2003, emphasizing in particular a redesign to focus the AP courses and exams on the knowledge and skills most essential for college success.
Trevor is here to talk to us specifically about all the changes that College Board recently brought to the world of AP, and that means he's here to talk to us about the following. 1. The launching of a number of new and/or revised course and exam descriptions, complete with advice on pacing and a much clearer indication of the important content and skills that a student needs to learn in order to earn a score of 3 or better. 2. The launching of AP Classroom with its personal progress check questions and its bank of 15,000 old AP questions. And 3. The launching of the new registration procedures. He's also willing, if time permits, to answer a few questions about the AP US Government course.
In any event, it's now time to hear from Trevor Packer, so without further ado, our interview with Trevor Packer.
Well, today we're so very excited to welcome Trevor Packer to the SMHS Titan Talk podcast. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us. It's truly an honor and pleasure to speak with you today.
Oh, well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thanks.
Trevor, as you know, I am both an AP US history teacher and an AP US government teacher. And I'm also someone who has been learning more and more about all the changes College Board brought to the world of AP this past summer. For all AP teachers, including those who next year may be teaching AP for the first time, I'm wondering, how do you describe those changes?
Wow, that is a big question. They're motivated by different reasons, so I'm not sure how to identify one cause for all of the changes. So maybe I should talk about just a few of the drivers of what we've done. I think first and foremost, I've worried for many years and have tried to make a number of changes that haven't fully addressed one key issue I see that has negatively impacted AP teachers and their students. And that is, if you're teaching a college course in U.S. history or a college course in political science, you as the college professor know exactly what is on your final exam, and if you happen to not cover a particular topic, you just don't include that on your final exam. And AP teachers are doing something much more challenging than that. They're teaching a college-level course without knowing exactly what the assessment will contain. And I've worried, as I've looked at AP exams over the years, I flip open an AP US history exam, and I see on a single page of it questions about the Dawes Act of 1887, the Stono Rebellion, and the New York conspiracy trials of 1741, the Battle of Antietam, Quakerism, Robert Owen, Andrew Carnegie, Ann Lee, Lucretia Mott, Dorothea Dix, Alice Paul. And I just think teachers are hit with these exams, and when the exams are so mysterious and have so many different topics on them, the pressure that puts on a teacher to race through content knowing that anything in a college textbook could show up on an AP exam and thereby prevent their student from earning college credit, that feels to me like an exam that does harm. That while it may be a valid and psychometrically sound instrument, it's not great for instruction if a teacher is racing through topic after topic. So I think the first real impetus for the changes we released last summer is a desire for the AP program to make a compact with teachers and to say, we will put in front of you on paper anything we would ask about on the AP exam. We will make a covenant with you, in essence, as AP teachers, that we will not ask your students questions for college credit that are not part of this course and exam description. We will be fully transparent so that you can then focus on teaching rather than racing. And we're not going to step into your classroom and tell you how to teach or which examples to use, but we are going to be very clear about learning objectives. We are going to say in an AP government class, the student must be able to explain the extent to which states are limited by the Due Process Clause. Or in an AP US History class, we are going to require that students be able to explain the various factors that contributed related to the Union victory in the Civil War, or in an AP biology class, we are going to require that students describe the processes that allow ions and other molecules to move across membranes. And so that sort of transparency, I want us to be crystal clear with teachers about the expectations that the AP exams will demand, so that teachers are then liberated to design instruction accordingly, so that teachers can focus on how do I help students learn this, even though my students are at varying learning levels and I'm going to need to differentiate my instruction. How can I help my students learn to explain the extent to which states are limited by the Due Process Clause, rather than racing through as many Supreme Court cases as possible because I don't know which ones are going to show up on that AP government exam. So that was really the first impetus. Let me pause there because I've been speaking for a few minutes, and then we can talk about some of the other reasons for these changes.
So what you're referencing there, of course, is the new online course and exam descriptions, correct?
Right. These are binders. We send a free copy of the binder to any teacher that requested one, and 155,000 teachers did. And the material is also online for the public to examine, for students to examine, for faculty at universities to examine. But these are binders that do lay out for every AP course the set of topics with the associated learning objectives that the AP exam may ask students about. And we recommend a sequence of instruction as well. Teachers aren't obligated to use that sequence by any means, but in order to accomplish a secondary goal of this project, we needed to have some recommended order of topics so that we could provide additional resources related to that sequence.
So first major change that came out this past summer was, in fact, the online CEDs, which were designed to, in essence, take out a lot of the mystery as to what teachers needed to teach in order for their students to do well on the test.
Yep, that is the first major change, these binders, both print binders and a PDF of it online, that serve as this compact between the AP program and the AP teaching population that lays out every topic and skill that could appear on the AP exam, so that teachers aren't having to guess what is there going to be a question about Lucretia Mott on the AP exam? Is there going to be a question about Marcus Garvey on the AP exam? That is no longer a mystery. That is all really transparent for the first time. And now the challenge in doing that, or the risk in doing that, I want to be really clear about, is that it can appear to prescribe a curriculum for teachers. And one of the things I've really valued about AP is that we don't have a fixed AP curriculum. We don't insist that every AP teacher use the same syllabus or teach the same examples. So I really wondered about that. How do we provide transparency without forcing absolute unity in teaching? And so we've had to make some. There's some real trade-offs there. To be frank, on the one hand, most of what we're doing here is laying out objectives, and the teachers then choose which examples they use, which text to use. In AP English, we don't tell the teachers a single text or poem or story that they should use. We simply lay out what students must learn to do with literature, and the teachers then choose all of the content. Now, in U.S. government, it's a little bit more prescriptive. In order to avoid the issue of a mile-wide, inch-deep approach to the teaching of Supreme Court cases, we have laid out 15 cases that we will focus the assessment on. And teachers are welcome to teach other cases, of course, but we couldn't find a way to achieve this goal of slowing down the mad dash through an AP curriculum and giving teachers time and space to focus on doing fewer things well without taking a stand and saying, well, these are the 15 cases that will be the focus of the assessment. And we will change those on a regular basis every 5 years or so that it isn't as if the College Board is saying that these are the 15 most important cases. But to accomplish what we saw as the greater goal of transparency, we did have to, in some AP courses, be very specific about particular topics that would or would not appear on the exam.
Let's go back to the CEDs just for a second. The pacing guides that are now in the CEDs. Am I correct that this is the first time the College Board gave clear pacing guides to 36 of the 38 AP courses you guys offer? Is that right?
That is right. This is the first time we've ever recommended pacing for AP courses. And that was also motivated by a desire to help teachers slow down. In European history, there's this sort of famous mantra within the teaching community that if you don't kill Napoleon by Christmas, there's no way you're going to get to the Cold War by test day. And sometimes what that results in is a rush through the earlier topics in the course that in many ways are so foundational that if students miss them or don't master those initial topics, they will be at sea in the later topics that understand sort of causal relationships between prior and later history. So our aim here really was to try to help teachers find ways to slow down and take more time on topics that we had evidence from the exam data teachers were feeling pressure to rush through.
I've looked at the pacing guides for AP Gov, AP US, and a number of the other AP courses, and where there were pacing guides in the past, I've seen that they in essence have either remained the same or most likely they've been reduced. What was the thinking there? And it seems to me it's almost as if you're suggesting that College Board now thinks the skills and the content can be taught in less time than ever before.
Tell me, just to make sure I'm following, Peter, tell me what you mean by reduced. The number of days was decreased per topic?
The number of 45-minute class periods that were suggested to teach the course. I did a little look, and I saw that for government, it seems to have gone down a little bit. For U.S. history, it definitely went down. A number of the other courses as well.
Yes. Yeah, what we were doing there was trying to create more space to reteach topics, to focus on writing skills, for review. So the model we used was to start with what is the typical number of days that a student would have if the school started after Labor Day, which about half of AP schools do, but still had to finish the course by the first week of May when the earliest AP exams are scheduled. So we started by working from the smallest amount of time that a school or a student or a teacher would have, and that's typically 140 class periods. And so we wanted to pace the course for fewer than 140 class periods so that teachers would have time in each unit to take the data from the formative assessments, which I think we'll talk about in a minute or two, Peter, to take formative assessment data and then reteach or help students relearn areas where they were struggling. We felt like data is not so helpful to teachers, and this is what we've heard historically. If teachers simply get data about what their students don't understand, but then don't have time to do anything about it, that data is of incredibly limited value. So that's what you're seeing there. You'll see that if you add up the days in these recommended sequences, they don't add up to 140 days. Typically, they add up to 120 days or so that there's time for reteaching and review.
So we've talked about the CEDs. That was the first major change that you guys put forward this summer. Let's have you describe that second major change, AP Classroom.
A second impetus for change is that I have felt that a weakness of the AP program is that there have not been mechanisms for the AP program to provide feedback to teachers and students until students get their exam score in July, when most students aren't thinking about, wow, how can I relearn the amendments to the Constitution, or how can I relearn the checks on the judicial branch? At that point, many students are not motivated to relearn and improve their learning because it's the middle of the summer and that course is over. So I haven't liked that. We've wondered, how can we provide real-time feedback for teachers and students all year long so that they can focus their time accordingly. I think teachers, I see many examples of heroism from AP teachers who are spending time on weekends and after school helping struggling students practice and relearn and learn again. But I've wondered, would teachers be even more able to help students learn? Our goal here is we would like every AP student to earn scores of 3 or better. Our exams are not norm referenced, they're criterion referenced. So if all students earn the points, they would all earn scores of 3 or better, and that's what we want. So we've tried to figure out how can we better enable that. And the bottom line is we don't know. We're not certain what we can do to be most helpful, but we want to be helpful. We really want to be a great partner to AP teachers because we love so much what you're doing with students and with such diverse. It's incredible the equity gains that AP teachers have achieved by bringing low-income students into their classrooms and students from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds. That is amazing, and we want to be helpful. We're not sure exactly how, but our starting point needs to be to better understand where students are struggling while there is still time to help them.
Trevor, this is Andrew. A little bit about me. I'm a relatively new high school social studies teacher. I've taught 16 years of summer school world history, but I've never taught an AP class yet. And if next year, if I'm going to get called up to teach AP World or Gov or maybe US even, what extent do you think these changes will help me in those classes? Hearing this is all I really need to get it done, do you think that's true?
Do I think what's true? Andrew, do I think what exactly is true?
Do you think that's all I need is that the AP classroom and the binder? Is there anything more I'll need if I have to teach that class?
How nice it would be to say everything you need in a binder and in a one-day workshop. And there's no way I would ever say you've got everything you need in a binder and a one-day workshop. That said, what we heard from the AP Summer Institutes last summer from experienced AP teachers who present and train and provide professional learning for new AP teachers is that the tears had disappeared, that a frequent phenomenon at an AP Summer Institute is brand new AP teachers breaking down crying over, I've been assigned to teach this AP class. I have no idea what the expectations are. I don't know what content I'm supposed to teach. I don't know what I'm doing. And now that there is this binder that very explicitly lays out the required topics and skills in an ostensible sequence that a teacher could adopt, we heard that there was a sea change at the AP Summer Institute, that the crying went away, and instead the teachers could focus on, how do I teach? How can I help my students better understand policy in the branches of government or federalism in action? It became a how do I teach rather than what am I supposed to teach? And so that feels like a huge step forward that I'm really excited about. But no, I think that teachers need to be part of a community and to be continually learning and to be experiencing job-embedded professional learning, all of the things that research would indicate help a teacher improve and become successful as an AP teacher or a teacher of any subject.
The binders, first major change, the AP classroom, a second major change. Was there a third one, or do you just see it as those two?
So AP Classroom, to be really clear, it is a series of brand new formative assessment questions that can be utilized to help teacher understand topics and skills with which their students are struggling in relation to where they should be at that point of the academic year. So what has happened in the past is that AP teachers have taken scissors to printouts of past AP exams and have cut up the AP exams and have tried to create unit tests comprised of summative AP test questions. And that can be good, that can be effective, but it can also be problematic because a student in an AP English class, for example, isn't expected to be able to perform at the level that a summative exam question demands in October. They're not expected to be able to perform at that level until May. And so what we wanted to provide was a series of questions that were appropriate for where a student should be in October or December or February or March or April, so that a student is getting feedback about how well they're doing in relation to what they should be able to do at that point in the course. So they are easy. Oftentimes the questions are easier than or more simple, I should say, than the sort of complex tasks that a student gets on an AP exam at the end of the year. But our goal was to provide this sort of feedback to students and teachers all year long so that both we at the AP program and the teachers and the students themselves are getting a much better understanding of where students are struggling. And then we at the AP program will use those data to design videos of teachers teaching those difficult topics that we'll put up for students and teachers to be able to access, resources designed to target those challenging topics and skills. But we want to build resources that are tied to actual data that pinpoints where students are struggling, so that we're helping focus our efforts on the areas that will most improve student outcomes.
I have a little data for you. So this year, my AP US History course, I taught the course 100% in line with the key concepts.
This is the former course description booklet. Is that right? The one before the binder?
Correct.
Got it.
So this year, if there's only one thing that I've done differently, it is the progress check questions just before the period test.
Yep.
And I give the kids 1 day to work on those in class, and 1 day we go over it, and then I give the unit test. And some 140 kids, on average, I've got a 5 to 6% increase in the number of kids who I would think are on track to earn a 3 or a 4. It's a significant increase in the number of students who are succeeding. And the only thing that I can attribute that to, I mean, obviously there are a million and one possible factors. Maybe I'm just teaching it better. You never know. But I attribute it to the progress check questions. And so I think that's a very, very powerful tool that you've created, and I look forward to seeing how that evolves.
Well, we do too. And the data you just shared is data that we don't yet have, so that's exciting. We are doing random control trials around the country right now so that we can understand, does usage of these progress checks, these formative assessments at the end of each unit, does that amount of additional practice have a causal impact on AP scores? Because we're looking for causality here, and I think the AP statistics teaching community will appreciate that. We're not going to be happy with correlations. We want to see this particular usage of better, more formative assessments all year long improve student success on the AP exam. I can tell you, based on our October and November surveys of AP teachers, we are seeing a lot of satisfaction with those personal progress checks. 84% of teachers we surveyed last fall felt that they were effective, these personal progress checks, and more than 55% of teachers exactly said they plan to use these formative assessment resources weekly, not just the end of each unit. So we're hearing some real enthusiasm about them. On our side, we have a lot to learn about how to format these and serve them up in ways that will be most slick and seamless for teachers in terms of the interface and the usability. So our goal that we have here at the AP program this year is to improve the visual appeal of these resources. But we're excited that teachers generally seem to be finding them to be so useful in this first year.
And you can add me to that list of teachers who have not only found these things useful, but I would go so far as to say I'm a big fan of them. In fact, I'm going to share a little something that I've been saying a lot lately. The AP classroom, and in particular the progress check questions, I've been so impressed with those that I refer to them as the equivalent of Henry Ford's Model T. In other words, I really do believe that what you guys have put forward there will ultimately be viewed as having transformed, I call it the horse and buggy landscape of advanced placement. I see it as bringing about a fundamental change. I won't be the least bit surprised if you guys can scientifically prove a 3, 4, 5, 6% increase in the number of students who are going to earn a 3 or better because of these checks, because of this AP classroom. And I also won't be surprised if that means that more students, because of this, will qualify to take the class. So, yeah, I know some people have said I've gone way over the top with that, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, but I am glad to hear that you're reporting that there are a good number of teachers out there who are feeling equally positive about the work you're doing. And what I'm curious about is it the progress checks that you feel best about, or is there something that you personally have said, hey, we brought this forward, and this has been really surprising, we really like how this is moving along right now?
So that's a great question, and there is a third component, a third major change this fall that is having the most immediate impact, I would say, in terms of measurable impact, and that is fall registration for the AP exam, which is in many ways the most controversial change we've made, having students decide at the start of the AP class rather than waiting until the end of the AP class to choose whether or not they're going to sit for that high-stakes AP exam. So that's the third big change. And in terms of immediate effect, it has dramatically increased. We can see we've got the exam registration data now. We can see which students have signed up for the AP exam. And the growth rate among African-American students, Hispanic and Latinx students, American Indian students is dramatic as a result of that fall registration. So there's something about telling students at the start of an experience that they are welcome, that they are expected to be part of a culture of high achievement that is having disproportionately positive effects on the minority students that have historically been underrepresented in the pool of students who take the AP exam and earn college credit. So that's in terms of immediate impact, that shift in the demographic of who is choosing to take the AP exam is a powerful, immediate, and very visible outcome of the changes we've made. But you're right. In terms of long-term changes, I'm most excited about these personal progress checks that allow both teachers and students as well as the AP program to understand much earlier in the academic year where a student might be struggling so that we can help that student rather than just telling them, read another chapter of the textbook, or sometimes we don't know exactly how to help a student practice or what they should practice. And we're hopeful that these personal progress checks can guide teachers in making students' homework time and further study time most focused and efficient.
I belong to a number of AP teacher Facebook pages. And on these pages, and I'm particularly referencing the AP US History teacher Facebook page, you're aware of this, there is some grumbling. There are a lot of teachers who speak positively about all this, but there is some grumbling. I want to ask some questions about some of that grumbling. What I'm especially interested in is the teachers who say that all these changes amount to nothing more than fueling the notion of a prescribed curriculum. That what this is all about is DMV kind of instruction. You had mentioned that earlier. Do you want to respond to that a little bit more?
Sure. The primary reaction we've heard is one of appreciation for the binders and the scope and sequence. So we've surveyed teachers to ask them how they're going to use the binders, and 11% of teachers say, I'm going to follow that sequence in the binder to a T. The other 89% of teachers say, no, I will reference it, and it will help me plan my instruction, but I'm not going to follow that sequence. So those numbers right there don't give me the sense that this is in any sort of overwhelming way restricting the sort of independence or freedom of teachers to design instruction accordingly. We really want the binder to give a brand new teacher something to start from and then modify and adapt as they work with other teachers and become more confident. Because for 55, 60 years, a brand new teacher has been completely on their own to sort of figure out how to stitch together a college-level course. So our goal here is to give a new teacher a starting point that they can modify and adapt as they become comfortable, but not just tell a teacher who is comfortable with what they're doing and is satisfied with their students' existing exam performance. We're not asking them to overhaul anything. That said, I think even experienced teachers are finding elements of these binders where they're saying, oh, I didn't realize that I don't need to be teaching that. I can actually set that by the wayside and focus a little bit more deeply on some other stuff that I care about more.
Trevor, how often do you see college board, adjusting that binder? Do you keep adding to it? Next year, is it going to be something totally different? We're going to keep adding to it, down the line. Where do you see that going?
We are concerned about a sense of something always in motion, always in change. And while to some extent some subjects change over time, computer science and some of the sciences, history, of course, changes over time, government politics. The commitment we're making is to make changes to the binder once every 5 years at most, because we don't want teachers to feel like this is a constantly shifting, these are shifting sands, that every year a curriculum that they've just developed is going to have to be tweaked or overhauled. And a number of AP courses have gone through significant redesigns over the past decade. So teachers were already, as you know, government politics just a year ago, and then there's this binder the next year. And as you've said, they're very, very similar. But that said, even tweaks can feel destabilizing to a teacher who's really focused on helping students learn fundamentals. So our objective is to make changes once every 5 years, unless we discovered an inadvertent error, like something that was just factually wrong in one of these, and then we would issue an errata notice right away. But that is a correction of error, not changing these. And we've thankfully there was a great editorial team on these, and we haven't seen any significant number of errors in the binders.
How often has that happened? Very often, or
we have seen, I believe in one of the physics binders, there was an error in one of the formulas, and then we post an errata that the teachers can put in the binder instead. But I'm not aware of, other than one or two examples like that, I'm not aware of any errors that have been found, other than sort of standard sort of typographical errors that are within the sort of range of acceptable errors per number of pages in any print publication.
Trevor, to go back just for a second to the Facebook page, just had one additional question I wanted to ask you there. And those teachers they're feeling a little depressed. A good friend of mine, AP Gov teacher, says that. He's feeling depressed. He feels that this is just taking away teacher autonomy. When I asked those teachers specifically if there's one thing that you could have that you would really like that would lift the spirit a little bit, make it not feel so much like a prescribed curriculum, what they point to is a desire to be able to edit the progress check questions.
So the progress checks themselves, because we and others need to look at them in relation to trends in a state or the country so that we can know where and how to provide assistance. Those are the one component of AP that will be fixed, that if someone wants to use a progress check, and that's something that they want, it does need to be tied to a specific body of content, a specific set of topics, so that it's providing the same amount of information as in Mississippi as it is in California. What a teacher could do instead is to create their own progress. We have the way the question bank is set up, and this is going to get a little technical, so check me on this if this isn't clear. There are these fixed progress checks in the system, but there's a second progress check that is unstructured in the question bank that teachers can pick and choose from to create their own version of a progress check if they don't want to use all of the topics that are in the pre-slugged progress check. Does that make sense? There's a fixed progress check, but we've built a second full set of questions that match the same specification as a progress check, but that does have modifiability, where teachers can sort of pick and choose which ones they want to include so that they can build their own progress check as sort of a shadow progress check if they don't want to use the one that we've set up for sort of standardization across regions and states. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm not aware of that.
Are people aware of that?
I wasn't. I haven't heard anyone say that to me. In fact, I did a fair share of research on various APUSH pages. What questions would you like to ask? And in this thing about the desire to edit the progress check questions came up periodically. but nobody ever said, hey, you can do it. So I don't know.
So it isn't the same as editing the progress check,
right.
But if you took an APUSH personal progress check for Unit 1, for example, there would be in the question bank, if you do a search for what is called the topic questions in the question bank, the topic questions are built to the same there are the same number of them, built to the same topic and skill pairings for each unit as there are in the personal progress check. And those topic questions are completely malleable. Teachers can pick the ones they want to assemble. I want to do a personal progress check for Units 1 and 2 together because I teach them in a slightly different order, and I'm not ready for my students to do a progress check until after Unit 2. Teachers could build their own personal progress check from the topic questions of Units 1 and Units 2 that are malleable in the question bank, that aren't part of the official PPCs for Units 1 and 2, but that are built to the exact same test spec as the PPC questions were built. We did that on purpose. So we built double the number of PPC questions as are needed in any of the fixed PPCs, so that there would in essence be a shadow set of PPC questions in the question banks that teachers could pick and choose from to create their own formative assessments. We need to sort of amp that sort of explanation up. We just sent out an email today announcing free webinars in February about ways to use AP Classroom, and it sounds like some feedback that you would have for us is make sure that's a little bit more clear. Now, to be fair, it's not called a personal progress check, but the teachers can use it as a personal progress check because it's the exact same questions, but teachers can pick and choose which ones they want from that battery of formative questions that we've provided there.
When you send out that email, something else that has caused, at least from my end, from what I can see, massive confusion, that I don't even know what you guys call it, color bar, the dark green, the light green, and that comes up after students have received their progress check question scores back. What that represents, what are teachers supposed to make of that?
Yeah, so when a student receives information about their performance on a progress check, rather than giving them a score, which we had concerns about because we did not believe that there was enough evidence that performance on a single personal progress check was dispositive about how a student would ultimately do. There's still, between a progress check in Unit 2 and the AP exam in May, there's still a lot of time for improvement. So we didn't want to provide a score that schools would then start using to tell students, you should give up, or you should stop trying, or you're too far off course. So instead, we did what a number of other providers of formative assessments do, which is to provide color-coded indications of how a student is doing: yellow, light green, dark green. We will know more. We have the same question, I think, that you have until we see what the correlations are between those colors or the performance that students attain on any one of these progress checks and their ultimate AP exam score. We don't have authority to say this is where a student should be in order to be likely to get a score of 3 or better. So in order for us to inform you all and to inform the AP community, there needs to be a large enough sample size of students both taking progress checks and then taking the final exam at the end of the year for statisticians to establish correlations between any one type of performance on any one of the PPCs and performance on the summative exam. So that's something we're very committed to being transparent about with the teaching community. We want you to have that information in the same way that we want that information, but this is the first year. We don't yet have correlations between performance on specific PPC questions or specific PPCs and the AP exam at the end of the year. So the color coding just felt like the safest and most the safest way to provide feedback. It is directional. It gives a sort of signal as to where a student is, but it doesn't make a claim that a student is likely to get a score of 4 or is likely to get a score of 2. We simply don't know that yet.
Trevor, we have some AP teachers at our school. We're very high performing. And they're saying a lot of the moves are pretty dramatic. This is really towards skill-based testing, and that this has lowered the bar for some of our students. I think what these teachers are saying is they're suggesting that it's like easier now for a student to get a 3 or better on the exam. Is that true?
The data don't show that at all. We haven't seen any meaningful difference in the mean scores of AP. And I'm always sort of confused when I've heard a few people mention that. I think that mostly what we hear is the opposite, that people feel like, oh, AP is still so focused on core content. Why doesn't AP embrace something more just entirely skills-based, where students are learning transferable skills that they're going to need in a variety of careers? So mostly the criticism AP receives is the opposite, that AP is too committed to core core knowledge within the liberal arts curriculum. So I need a little bit of help. Can you give me an example of where a teacher feels that we are too skill-based? Like, I don't see it. I mean, every question we have in our test specs, the questions are required to measure content knowledge and the performance of a skill. We value both. We don't think a skill on its own, if a student isn't able to apply it to a piece of content, is very meaningful. But nor do we think that simply a flashcard approach to AP is in the best interest of students retaining and applying their knowledge in the future. So we're trying to do both. Can you tell me a little bit more about this concern?
I'm not so sure I can. Again, we just talked to a number of AP teachers and heard from them. I have an entire list of questions they wanted us to ask and thought we would put this one forward. I can take you to the other end of that. Mm-hmm.
I did hear it I heard it a few years ago, the first year we released the redesigned AP history exam, because the old AP history exam, of course, consisted of multiple choice questions that were almost entirely what I would call flashcard questions. Students weren't required to analyze primary or secondary sources. They were almost never required to analyze data or charts or graphs. There was a little bit of that, but not much. They're mostly just sort of factual recall questions. I've got one in front of me. Let me just, some of these questions. The National Organization for Women was founded in 1906 in order to, and then the student has to say what it was founded for. Jacob Riis is best known for his work in the 1890s. Marcus Garvey's prominence during the 1920s arose from. Theodore Roosevelt was the first president, too. Members of the Hudson River School were best known for paintings of. I mean, all this stuff that I don't have evidence a student retains and applies if all they have to do is memorize random facts on flashcards. And don't get me wrong, I believe deeply in the importance of memorization and of memorizing facts. We need that evidence to be able to work as historians or scholars or writers or scientists. But when we first redesigned the AP history exam, we did hear a lot of concern that first year that we had turned it into a reading test, because all the multiple choice questions now do require students to extract historical evidence from charts and graphs and tables and primary and secondary sources. But the mean performance on it was lower than it was on the old. There was no evidence that was easier for students. It was, in fact, the evidence was the opposite, that students had a lower mean over max score, slightly lower. It wasn't significantly lower, but slightly lower when asked to actually do the work of a historian and extract historical evidence from a primary or secondary source.
Our former, recently retired superintendent has encouraged me to ask you this question, and it actually takes this entire discussion in a completely different direction. So he was a really big fan of Common Core. And with that said, historically speaking, he hasn't been a big fan of AP because I think he would, in essence, say he viewed it as an exercise in trivial pursuit. So what he's wondering here is these changes that you brought forward, just how far are they going to go to Common Coreizing or infusing more of the Common Core spirit into AP? Will AP align better with Common Core because of these changes?
Oof, I don't know. I mean, it has not been part of the thinking, because AP courses are designed to reflect introductory college courses, so it hasn't been AP has not been intentionally designed to reflect the Common Core standards or to align with the Common Core standards. I would guess that relationships between AP and the Common Core standards are enhanced for several reasons. That because the Common Core is in an evidence-based way seeking to identify skills fundamental to college readiness, and because AP is designed to represent college readiness, what you're doing in a college class, it's not surprising that a lot of evidence-based, research-based scholarly work to build the Common Core and to redesign AP courses would result in harmonies between those two. But there was no formal intent to do that. That has not been a governing principle for AP, and that has not been the intentionality of these changes.
Trevor, one of the changes we're making next year is this idea of dual enrollment. Some folks, they think this dual enrollment is going to be sort of the end of AP. Can you explain your feelings towards dual enrollment?
Sure. And I mean, stop me here, because it is a complicated terrain, and I want to be fair. And to be fair, there are different flavors of dual enrollment, just like there are different levels of AP performance, I could say. So what we see in the research is that when a 4-year college is inviting high school students onto its campus to take a college course right there on campus, that can be very powerful. It can have an incredible effect on a student's choice to enroll at a four-year institution. The learning outcomes can be solid. Students can be well prepared for placement into a subsequent college course based on the credit they earn through that four-year college. So, wow, more power to that model. I think most states and our nation, we want more students ready for college regardless of how they get ready. So I'm a big supporter of that type of dual enrollment. What I feel more concerned about based on the data and the various studies that different states have recently commissioned is simply slapping an adjunct label onto a high school teacher and saying, if you pay this community college tuition dollars, whatever grade that high school teacher gives, that student's going to get college credit for. And I feel concerned about that in the same way that I would feel concerned about if we gave every AP student college credit. Our evidence shows that not every AP student who simply sits through an AP class is ready to place into a sophomore level course. And we want students prepared for college. We want to do the work in high schools with AP teachers that will make sure that students are ready for credit and placement so they don't flounder and struggle and drop out and incur debt without a degree. So we feel strongly that students should only receive college credit if they're hitting learning standards that research support, for which research then supports them receiving college credit and placement into a higher level course. And unfortunately, with a lot of the dual enrollment provided by two-year institutions who are adjuncting a local teacher, and there aren't very many controls in place in many of these programs, what we see in the outcomes when students go on to college is we do not see them successful when they're placed into the sequent course. The state of Georgia recently did a study on this and found that despite pouring millions of dollars of taxpayers' money into these programs, there was no noticeable impact on college costs or college completion rates. So my position is we should do what the research shows works, and when research, and in cases where research validates high-quality dual enrollment, I support that fully. I think dual enrollment should need to meet the same standards that AP has met for 60 years in proving out that when students pass an AP exam, they will be successful when they're placed into a subsequent higher-level college course.
Yeah, well, there's some people that say taking the two-year level course at the junior college and getting credit is actually easier than the AP course.
That's the issue, that because in some of these dual enrollment programs, all you need to do to earn the college credit is to sit through the class, to complete the class. That would be like saying every student who simply sits through an AP class should also receive the college credit. And we know that isn't fair to students or to the colleges that receive them.
Another major change, Trevor, we're having is getting rid of weighted grading, the weighted grading system. How do you feel about that?
I feel two things about that. On the one hand, I'm concerned about the arms race that can occur when students feel pressure to pile up more AP courses than their peers out of some sort of attempt to outcompete others in a high-stakes college admissions decision. So we commissioned some research a year or so ago to try to identify how many APs is enough. Is there a point at which if you take an additional AP, it doesn't help you at all in terms of your college success? And what we found is a number much smaller than many people might think. That what we found is that after taking 5 AP total in high school, that is just 1 or 2 AP classes a year, a student doesn't become more likely to graduate on time. That a student maximizes their AP benefits in terms of on-time college graduation simply by taking 5 APs total. Maybe one as a sophomore, 2 as a junior, and 2 as a senior. So when we hear of students feeling pressure to take 10 or 15, if it's pressure to take those, we are opposed to that. And if part of the reason they're doing that is to boost their GPA because they get extra GPA bonus points for AP, we would encourage a change of policy so that the GPA bonus points stop after a student has taken a core number of APs that research shows is going to prepare them for college. So I am very much in favor of capping or limiting those sorts of GPA bonus points. On the other hand, though, the National Association of Secondary School Principals published research from professors at Harvard and University of Virginia that definitely does support the GPA bonus point because the students taking an AP course will be likely to earn a lower grade, and that GPA bonus point can offset that in ways that the researchers found was fair and just. So I support the idea of GPA bonus points as a way to encourage students to take a risk on a more challenging course. I don't like the idea of students avoiding challenging courses just because they want to get a higher GPA. But I think we need to set some limits on that so it doesn't turn into this crazed situation where the typical GPA is 5.0 because everyone's piling up so many bonus point courses. But I'm curious, do you know, you're closer to this than I am. Help me understand other nuances to this issue that I may not be recognizing.
What I see from my students, and I don't teach an AP class yet, but what I do see is a lot of pressure and stress for these kids at the lower levels. I teach a lot of freshman classes to really, push to take as many as they can, or they're very competitive. And that, I think, sometimes has an impact on them emotionally. It's such a competitive grind. And that brings me to the next thing I really want to talk to you about is I'm a huge proponent of wellness. I'm on the wellness council here, and I'm wondering, is there anything that College Board has brought forward to promote student wellness?
Yeah, I mean, the study I just mentioned, we speak about it all the time. We've created a one-pager of it that we hand out to teachers, to counselors, to try to stop the madness around a pressure to take inordinate numbers of advanced courses. We believe that advanced academics should be just one part of the many wonderful things a student can experience in high school. And if they're consumed by a pressure to take lots and lots of tough, challenging courses, they will be missing other great opportunities. Now, there are some students who I want to be deeply respectful of that genuinely want more of those types of AP courses and want to take more. But I don't want the reason to take AP courses to be because I feel pressure to compete with other students and to stand out in college admissions. I want it to be because a student genuinely want to learn in that type of environment. So we are trying to circulate widely these findings of ours that you don't need more than 1 or 2 AP courses a year to maximize your college readiness and to optimize your on-time college graduation rates.
Some schools have open enrollment. How do you feel about that?
Generally very positive, because historically there have been so many artificial barriers that have disproportionately screened out students who don't have parents who are strong advocates, who have already gone through AP classes themselves and knew what to ask for. So I don't love the idea of artificial barriers or gates. We've seen very low correlations in the research between prior grade, prior GPA, and success in AP. So when we hear of schools that set up GPA barriers that a student must hop over to make it into an AP class, we question the validity of such barriers, particularly, again, because these barriers have historically advantaged those who have strong parental advocates who have already been through that sort of system and work against potentially first-generation college students. So we definitely encourage the removal of artificial barriers. We don't believe all students should just be placed into AP courses because all students are not ready for college-level courses. But we do believe all students deserve consideration for academic opportunities like AP.
Trevor, this is Peter again. I'm looking at the clock here, seeing that we're getting to the end of our hour. With the time that we have left, a number of the AP Gov teachers had some great questions. I think they'll go quickly here. The first one is, you have a semester-long AP Gov and a year-long AP Gov. Would it at all be possible to somehow, maybe in the guide to school leaders, to say that, in your opinion, this course is best taught in the year-long? Or to rephrase the question, is the course actually designed for the semester? Then what are the year-long teachers supposed to do other than this required civic project, which I'll get to in just a second?
Oh, that's a great question. 57% of AP government classrooms are taught over the course of the full year. So that is what we designed to. We wanted to support those teachers that are teaching over a full year. We didn't want to do anything that would undercut their ability to maintain a full year of instruction. This is a discipline that we think is incredibly important for all the reasons that are obvious for our country at this point in time. So we didn't want to undercut that, and so we designed for what the majority are doing, which is a year-long course. I do worry about the challenge of teaching this in a semester, but I don't have data to support my worry yet. We need to do the analysis of how students are performing based on whether they're doing a year-long or a one-semester government course, and then we'll report that back out to you. If what that analysis shows is that students that are doing a full year course are performing better on the AP exam than students who are doing a semester course, then yes, I think your recommendation is exactly right. We should publish that information in the guide for high school administrators that makes that crystal clear, that we recommend that this be taught over the course of a full year because here's the performance differences between those two models.
I'm also wondering about the required civic action project. From what I'm hearing, a large number of teachers are pushing that off until after the May exam. I question how serious students will take that project. I'm a big fan of it. I think great opportunity for kids. I'm wondering, how do you expect teachers and students to take that seriously if there's not any accountability for it?
I wonder that same thing. And I've wondered that ever since this idea of including the project arose. So one of the things we will be asking AP government teachers is, if you think back to what we talked about earlier in this conversation, which is how often is AP government going to change? And we want to restrict changes to once every 5 years or so that teachers aren't feeling like the rug is always being pulled out from under them. But the next big change that we'll be asking AP government politics teachers about, what we would do 5 years from now, would be, and we'll be asking teachers in every subject this question, frankly, which is the newer AP exams, AP Capstone, AP Computer Science Principles, they all have a shorter final AP exam because the AP exam score is based not just on that final exam, but on projects that students do during the year. So a question that the AP government community can expect the College Board to be surveying them on soon is, would you like 5 years from now, the next time we make changes to AP government, would you like the AP government exam to be a shorter final exam and for us to score the student's project or to score other work that they do during the academic year? And so we're eager to learn from that. The subjects that do have that model like it a lot. They would never want to go to having all of the AP credit be based just on that end of course exam. We've heard already strong indications from the AP English community that they really want to shift to that model so that there's more work that the student is doing to write and revise papers instead of only having timed essays on the AP exam at the end of the year. But we'll ask each AP subject that question so that we can decide whether or not it would make sense to do something like have the AP government project count towards the AP exam.
Last question for you. Would it all be possible in next year's guide for school leaders or even before then to provide them with some language that indicates why this work is so important for students to do and to encourage them, to encourage their AP Gov teachers to take the work seriously and students to do the same?
This is words from the College Board as to why we see this discipline, government and politics itself, so important. Am I following that? Tell me a little bit more about the problem. What's the problem that I feel like I'm fuzzy on? What is the problem the questioner wants to solve there? Do they feel that teachers aren't taking this seriously? I'm not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the thought is that teachers teach the course to prepare them for the multiple choice questions and the free response. And then after the test.
I see. So the question was specifically about, is there something we could be saying to encourage that the project be taken seriously, not the course? Yeah, it was about the project in specific. That's a good question. I don't know. I'll want to learn more and understand to what extent that is a problem that AP government politics teachers. So is the issue that some members of the AP government community are feeling like other teachers aren't taking this seriously, and so it's creating, whose behavior are we trying to change here?
From my personal standpoint, as a member of the California State task force that reinvigorated civic learning here in California, a civic action project is a great learning opportunity for students, and something that is to be taken seriously. Some do, and I think many simply say, I'm not bothering with it. I'm just going to push it off to the end. So personally, I'm wondering if there's something you guys can do to encourage teachers to put it more seriously before their students and support it better.
I need to understand. I asked the AP Government Politics lead and his manager if they had any data indicating that teachers weren't taking this seriously, and they said they're not hearing that. But it sounds like you are hearing examples of that. So I just want to learn more about this problem in order to have a point of view as to whether there's something we could do to try and help with it. Ultimately, I think the best solution is to include that sort of thing in the AP exam score, like we do in AP Computer Science Principles or AP Capstone, because then it's treated with utmost seriousness. But it sounds like you're wondering if there's something interim that could be done, and I just want to better understand what the problem is.
Well, isn't there the view if it's not tested for,
why do it?
Exactly.
Yeah, there is. I mean, we don't see that so much in AP Biology. We don't make them submit their lab manuals for scoring, or in AP Chemistry, and we don't hear indications that the lab time is sort of not valued. And in asking my team this, they said they're not hearing themselves instances of the project not being taken seriously. But it sounds like on the Facebook groups or elsewhere, you all are hearing examples of the project not being taken seriously. So I want to better understand that.
I'd be curious what the numbers would show if you looked into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm curious to learn more.
In any event, Trevor, have you ever sat for a podcast before?
That is a good question. I do not know. I have been interviewed by teachers before. I don't know if it was for a podcast or some other purpose. But this has been fun. I've enjoyed it. Would it be helpful? Should I give my email address to your audience in case there are follow-up questions that we weren't able to get to? I would never want someone to not know how to get feedback to us or a question to us if they had one. So I'm happy to give my email address if you think people would want that.
Great. I think we'd love that, Trevor. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, so it's my name, again, Trevor Packer, and my email address is my first initial and then my last name, all is one word, tpacker@collegeboard.org. And gosh, if there's anything, if there's anything that ever feels wrong or not right about AP or about something that a teacher or their classroom is experiencing, I would want them to let me know right away. We can only fix things or help with things here once we know about them. And so there are lots of channels whereby people can get help. We have a customer service center and so on. But if anyone ever feels blocked or stymied or frustrated, I would really welcome an email from them and would love to help.
We'll put that into the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
Trevor, we've come to the end of our hour. I cannot thank you enough. I can't thank College Board enough for making this happen for us today. We really appreciate it, and we learned a lot from you.
Yeah,
well, I've appreciated the conversation. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Good luck for the rest of the year, and so all the AP teachers, good luck to them as well.
I agree.
Thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.